Dear learners, in first part of this lecture on plant structure and functions, we talked about different types of plant cells and plant tissues. In the second part, we are going to talk about plant organs. The main difference between our organs and a plant's organs is that of number and the ability to regrow, replace or reuse those organs. About number, we have one or a maximum of two organs. For example, we have one nose and two hands. We have one brain and two kidneys. Whereas plants can have many of them. For example, a plant can have dozens of stems, thousands of leaves. So that is the first difference in the number of plant organs. And the second and even more important difference is the ability to regrow or reuse them. We humans cannot naturally replace our organs when they lose their functions. For example, we cannot replace our heart or brain naturally. However, plants can replace their organs and they do so during their growth cycle. For example, every year a deciduous plant can shed its leaves. Every year they produce many flowers and fruits, and next year again they flower and again they can produce fruits. So these are the two key differences between our organs and plant organs. We have one or a maximum of two organs, whereas plants have many of them. And we cannot naturally replace our organs, whereas each year plants can regrow their organs, they can replace their leaves, flowers, fruits, etc. If we talk about a plant body has three vegetative organs: roots, stem, and leaves. So these are three vegetative organs. Flowers, which are the reproductive structure or modified leaves containing the sexual reproductive organs necessary for seed production. So they are modified leaves. Now we are going to discuss each of these organs separately, its functions, its anatomy, and its morphology. Starting from the root. When we place a seed in the soil, the first thing that emerges through the seed coat, that is the protective covering of seed, is radicle. So when a radicle has emerged through the seed coat, technically a seed has germinated. The root develops from this radicle. So root is the first organ that develops from a germinating embryo. Based on the shape of root, we can divide the root types into two main groups: taproots and fibrous roots. Taproot system, that is a typical characteristics of dicots, is a deep-rooted system in which there is a large central root, a primary root with shorter lateral or branching roots. So this is the primary root, and then there are lateral roots or branching roots. Whereas in fibrous system, that is a typical characteristic of monocots, we have an interwoven mass of short hair-like roots which are more shallow. However, due to more number of fibrous roots, still plant is able to hold itself into the ground. Both fibrous and taproots are called tuberous when they are modified to act as storage organs, or when it is able to store food reserves. For example, sweet potato develops from the tuberous roots. So a tuberous root is an enlarged, modified, fleshy organ that produces shoot and roots at the other end. These roots are the underground parts of a plant, but sometimes there are roots that grow from atypical parts and are called as adventitious roots. For example, brace roots at the base of the maize stalk, or adventitious aerial roots of banyan tree that we often see hanging from the top. The main functions of roots can be divided into two types: primary functions and secondary functions. Among primary functions are anchoring of the plant into soil, that is the natural medium for plant growth. So they firmly hold the whole plant body. If the root system is weak or absent, the plants would topple over. They are also responsible for uptake of water and minerals from soil, and they are responsible for the synthesis of certain hormones such as gibberellins or cytokinins. So these are the primary important functions of plants. Among the secondary functions are storage. Sometimes roots become fleshy and they can store various substances, for example sugar, starch, water, etc. And this capacity makes them an important horticulture and edible commodity. Although plant stores its food reserves for its survival, during harsh periods. But it makes them an edible horticulture commodity, for example, beet roots or carrot or radish, etc. And they are also means of survival for a plant. For example, sweet potato can grow from its roots, and different weeds like dandelion, they can grow from roots, and it's an important survival mechanism of those weed plants. But it also makes difficult for human beings, for agriculturists, then to control those weeds. So these are the primary and secondary functions of a root. If we talk about root anatomy, the principal difference between a dicot root and a monocot root is that in a dicot root, the vascular bundle is arranged in a star-shaped arrangement, whereas in a monocot root, the vascular bundle is arranged in a circular ring. So here you see that the xylem cells are located in the center of the root in a star-like arrangements, surrounded by the phloem in dicot plants. There is a layer of vascular cambium cells that are responsible for root diameter growth, and that separates the phloem and xylem. And there is a ring of endodermis and pericycle cells that surround these vascular tissues. The function of the pericycle cell is that they give rise to branch or lateral roots which grow outwards through the endodermis. The other major portion of the roots is the cortex, that is made primarily of parenchyma tissues for energy storage, and the endodermis or the outer protective covering of the root. In the monocot root, you see there is an alternating xylem and phloem cells that encircle a central core of pith, and a layer of cortex surrounds the vascular ring. Both monocots and dicots have numerous root hairs. These root hairs are extensions of the epidermis that significantly increase the root surface area. The next organ that we are going to talk about is stem. When you plant a seed in the soil, the radical emerges through the seed coat and gives rise to root. While on the opposite side, the germinating embryo, germinating seed produces plumule that produces a primary axis, what we call as stem or shoot. So the stem grows in opposite direction to the root, whereas root is positively geotropic, the stem is negatively geotropic. So root is positively geotropic, the stem is negatively geotropic. Root lacks buds, leaves or stomata, whereas stem has leaves, buds, nodes, internodes, etc. So when we have leaves on the stem, then it is called as shoot. And a shoot can also have fruits or flowers as well. The main functions of a stem are support. So it is a supporting structure for leaves, branches, fruits and flowers. Then its other important function is transport. Stem acts as a channel for the transport of water, minerals and the products of photosynthesis between roots and stem. The point of attachment of roots and stems is called as crown. So it is the point of attachment of roots and stem. Other important function of a stem is storage. It stores different food reserves or energy reserves for proper growth and development of the plant. Stem conducts photosynthesis. Stem or shoot conducts photosynthesis, and stem is also responsible for survival of the plant. In certain plants, stem is used as a means of vegetative reproduction or vegetative propagation. For example, stem cuttings of sugarcane or the underground parts of potato, that is technically called as potato tubers, which bear buds and that can be used as propagating or seed material. These are the main functions of stem. A stem can have different shapes. For example, cylindrical shapes, spherical shape, angular shapes, polygonal shape, and then there are some special shapes like bracket shapes or conical shape. So different plants have different shapes of a stem. And in grasses we have special types of offshoots or stems which are called as tillers. Offshoots. Tillers developed at the crown. So this is the mother plant which grows from seed, and at a certain point of in time, that is called the tillering stage. Usually it starts about 30 to 45 days after sowing in wheat. A plant starts producing certain offshoots which are called as tillers. These tillers can be productive if they bear a spike or reproductive structure, or they can be non-reproductive if they don't bear a spike or don't bear flowers. There is a slight difference in the anatomy of dicot and monocot stems. In dicot plants, the vascular bundle is arranged in the form of a ring that separates the cortex and pith, whereas in monocots, the vascular bundles are scattered throughout the pith. Stems can be distinguished from other plant parts by the presence of nodes, internodes, and buds. Nodes are enlarged portion of the stem to which leaves are attached. The distance between two nodes is called as internode. And a stem bears different buds, which can be vegetative or floral. A bud can be vegetative or floral. If a bud produces branches, then it is called as a vegetative bud. And if it produces flowers or reproductive structures, then it is called a floral bud. A stem can have buds on its different locations. This is called as apical bud or terminal bud if it is located at the tip of shoot or apex of the shoot. If they are located in leaf axils, then they are called as axillary buds. If they are located on the sides or just above these axillary buds, then they are called as accessory buds. And if they grow from points other than the nodes, then they are called as adventitious buds. Usually most of stems have a vertical structure, but some plants have modified stems that enable them to spread horizontally and reproduce asexually and store energy or food for its survival. So different types of underground or modified stems are onion bulbs, cloves, for example garlic, cloves, corms, for example in glads. We have rhizomes, for example in bamboo or ginger. We have runner, for example in strawberry, suckers, in banana or pineapple, and we have stolons and tubers. Example of stolon is Bermuda grass, and example of tuber is potato tubers. So these are different modified form of stem which can be present underground and which act as food reserves and as a means of reproduction or survival. The next organ that we are going to discuss is leaf. First leaves originate from plumule, whereas the following leaves come from terminal or axillary buds of stem and branches. Leaves are the primary organs where photosynthesis and transpiration occur. A leaf consists of a green expanded part that is called as blade or lamina. where photosynthesis takes place. It can have a central midrib and lateral veins in a dicot plant, and it attaches to the stem by means of a petiole. This petiole attaches it to a stem or branch and projects the leaves into the environment for maximum light interception. And it can have auxiliary buds in its axil, which develop into vegetative or floral or reproductive parts. If we talk about leaf arrangement on the stem, it can be alternate. This is alternate type of leaf arrangement, or there can be opposite leaves, or leaves can be arranged in the form of a whorl. This is whorl shape arrangement. If we talk about the leaf anatomy, I draw it here. Leaf has an upper protective covering of dermal cells that is called as upper epidermis, which is further protected by a waxy substance, a waxy layers called cuticle, which prevents water loss and helps plant defend against pathogens. Then we have mesophyll cells, which are meant for photosynthesis. They contain chloroplast and they are meant for photosynthesis. We have vascular bundle, xylem and phloem, and we have lower epidermis, and in the lower epidermis there are specialized guard cells, and by the opening and closing of these guard cells, or through the regulation of these guard cells, there arise certain pores, what are technically called as stomata. Stomata is the site where carbon dioxide enters the leaves and where oxygen and water vapor can leave the plant. So this is the basic anatomy of a leaf. About leaf functions, as evident from the leaf anatomy, leaves are meant for photosynthesis. They are the structure for light interception. They have a high surface to volume ratio, and they are very thin, projected into the air by means of petiole. So they are ideal for light interception and for photosynthesis, and they appear green because they contain a plant pigment chlorophyll, which can absorb most of the wavelengths except green, that is refracted light. As I showed in anatomy that plant leaves have stomata that are usually present on the lower side. A leaf has an upper side which is called as adaxial side, adaxial surface, and a lower side which is called as abaxial side of the leaf. So usually mesophytes have their stomata on abaxial side, whereas hydrophytes have their stomata on adaxial side, and some plants have their stomata on both adaxial and abaxial side. So through those stomata there is exchange of gases like carbon dioxide and water vapors. They are a means of transport through their veins. They are connected to the vascular system of the plant. They are able to maintain plant temperature through the process of transpiration, and some of the leaves are edible, which makes them an important horticultural commodity. For example, spinach or lettuce or cabbage. So these are main functions: photosynthesis, transpiration, transport, and exchange of gases and maintenance of temperature. Monocot plants consist of a sheath, blade and collar. The blade is the flat surface of the leaf that is exposed for maximum interception of light. The sheath is the lower portion of the leaf that surrounds the stem. And the monocot plants also have a leaf collar like structure called as auricle, and sometimes a tongue-like structure called as ligule. Simple leaves are composed of a blade and a petiole that attaches the blade to the stem. Dicot leaves have a lateral venation, whereas monocots have a parallel leaf venation. Some plants have other modified leaves such as tendrils that help the plants to climb. For example, in pumpkin, tendrils wrap around other parts, other plants or structures and provide support for the stem of the plant. These tendrils consist of collenchyma cells which give plants support as well as flexibility. Last organ that we are going to talk about is flower. Flower is the reproductive organ of the plant, and the process of sexual reproduction begins in flowers. Let me draw the structure of a typical flower. A typical flower consists of four parts: sepals, petals, stamens, and pistils. Sepals are the green leaf-like structure that protect the bud. In some plants like cotton, they are too large to cover the whole bud. However, after the opening of bud, they appear small. The petals are the colored part of the plant. This colored showy part of the plant functions to attract the pollinators, and sometimes they also provide partial protection to the reproductive structures that are stamen and pistil. Stamen is the male reproductive structure that consists of a stalk, or that is technically called as filament. The filament bears anthers, and together this anther and filament is called as stamen. Within the anther, several pollen grains are produced. So this is the male reproductive part. Whereas the female reproductive part consists of stigma, style, and ovary. This makes the pistil or female reproductive part. So during the process of pollination, the pollen grains are transferred from anther to the stigma of the plant, which develop a pollen tube and reach the ovary, where there are ovule, and within the ovule there are eggs where the pollens combine or fuse with egg, and this process is called as fertilization. Flowers can have different forms in plants, and there can be perfect or imperfect flowers. A perfect flower has both reproductive parts, stamen and pistil, whereas an imperfect flower has only stamens or pistils. So it lacks either male or female part. So if it has the male reproductive part, then it is called as staminate flower, and if it has the female reproductive part, then it is called as the pistillate flowers. And based on whether a plant has both staminate and pistillate flowers or lacks one of them, a plant can be monoecious if it has both staminate and pistillate flowers, and it is called as a dioecious if it lacks stamen or pistil. For example, in date palm or kiwi fruit or some varieties of papaya, the male and female plants are different. Flowers can be categorized as complete or incomplete. They are called as complete if they have all of the four structures: sepals, petals, stamens, and pistils. For example, this is a rose flower. Here you can see the green leaf-like structures or sepals. Then we have this colored petals, and if we pluck this and remove the petals, Here we have the reproductive structures. So here you see anthers which are borne on filaments, and these anthers have pollen grains in them. Filament and anther make the male reproductive part or stamen. This is the female reproductive part. You can also see pedicel, receptacle, and stigma, style, and ovary. The flower stem is called as pedicel, while part of the pedicel that hold the flower parts is called as receptacle. Here is an example of a complete flower which has orthole parts, sepals, petals, stamens, and pistils. And this is an example of an incomplete flower in which sepals are absent. Here we end this lecture on plant structure and functions. I hope you are better able to understand that plant structure is related to its functions, and there are different specialized cells and tissues for uh, each function or functions. And the principal difference between our organs and plant organs is the number of organs and the ability to regrow those organs. And you should also be able to describe different functions, uh, morphology, and anatomy of different plant organs like roots, stem, leaves, and flowers. Stay blessed wherever you are and keep learning. Thank you very much.